Okay, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sabrina Kofer, and on behalf of Choice and ACRL, I'd like to welcome you to today's program, Unlocking Insights with Generative AI, How to Enhance Research Efficiency in the Library, which is sponsored by Elsevier. This session is one in a series of sponsored webinars from Choice and ACRL that addresses new ideas and developments of interest to the academic library community. And now I'll just put some links in the chat where you can register for upcoming Choice ACRL webinars or watch previous webinar recordings. Also, if you're interested in library technology, LibTech Insights, or LTI is a content vertical from Choice that examines the day-to-day impact of library and education technology on academic librarians, faculty, researchers, administrators, and students. The channel provides practical guidance on technology trends and products as they relate to productivity, accessibility, discoverability, operations, and content management. And you can find more about LTI or sign up for the newsletter via the links in the chat. Okay, so before we get started, I'd like to point out just a few features of the webinar software. All attendees who join the presentation are automatically muted and your cameras are off, so don't worry about generating any noise or feedback. We've got that taken care of for you. In the main area of the screen, you can follow along with the presentation materials. To adjust the size of the slides or video, you can use the divider in the middle of the screen to slide the sizes to your liking. We are using the Q&A feature today. Please use it to ask questions of our speakers or to share any comments. We'll answer as many questions as we have time for at the end of the presentation, so please type your questions into the Q&A module as they occur to you. We do anticipate many questions, so if we don't get to yours, we apologize for that, but we will do our best to answer as many questions as we have time for. You can also use the upvote feature to highlight questions you like or would like to be addressed. Also, there is closed captioning available for today's session. To toggle the automated captions on or off, please use the CC button on the bottom right corner of your screen. Last, please note that we are recording today's program and everyone who registered should receive a follow-up email with a link to the archive version and where to access the slides. And with that, we are ready to get started. So I will hand it over to Emily.
Great. Thank you so much, Sabrina, and welcome everyone. My name is Emily Singley, and I am the Vice President of North American Library Relations at Elsevier, and I'm delighted to be here with all of you as the moderator of today's session. Our speakers today are Aguilera-Cora and Adrian Raudaschl. Ellie is a predoctoral fellow in communications from the University Pompeu Fabra in Spain, and she's going to be talking about how she's used Scopus AI to find literature in her area of study. And Adrian is the senior product manager for Scopus AI, and he's going to be talking a little bit more about the technology and how it works. So this is just a quick agenda. I'm going to start us off with a very brief introduction and background. Adrian's going to tell us a little bit about Scopus AI, and then Ellie will go into her case study and will demonstrate the tool as well. And we really do want to allow plenty of time at the end, as Sabrina mentioned, for all of your questions. So please, as questions come to you, put them into the Q&A, and we will get to those as many as we can at the end of today's session. So just to kick it off, how can generative AI improve research workflows? And that's really the question that we want to address today. How can we leverage generative AI technologies responsibly to enhance scholarly work? I know you all have played around with ChatGPT. You use it in your everyday life if you're like me. But that's not a scholarly tool. So we want to talk about whether we can develop tools that are trustworthy, accurate, and based on the scholarly corpus that can really improve research workflows. And if we do that, I think there's the potential, could Gen AI mean that researchers spend less time sort of swimming around in search results and synthesizing and summarizing all of those search results? And could Gen AI really liberate those researchers to spend more time doing the learning and teaching and knowledge creation that we want them to be doing, right? So that's what we want to talk about a little bit today. And that was really our primary use case for developing this tool, Scopus AI, right? We were especially interested in this kind of what you might call an exploratory research phase, right? We found as we were developing this that this was a need that was identified by 60% of Scopus users, how to learn about new topics, things that might be somewhat unfamiliar with them, more effectively, more efficiently, right? And I know you've probably been in this situation. I've been in this situation, right? Where you're starting a new topic or you're, delving into something you don't really know about. And you just start getting all sorts of search results. You don't even know what the right terminology is. You might not have the jargon for that area of study. And you just don't know where to start or how to make sense of all the results you get back. And it can be extremely time consuming. And then eventually, I've done this so many times. You hit upon that like one paper that like unlocks the topic and you go, oh, like for me, I did this research on sense making, right? And I wasn't calling it that because I didn't know that's what it was called. And then it just unlocked the topic for me and I found the right papers. So that was kind of our use case, how to solve this information overload problem, particularly in the exploratory research phase. And then I also want to just touch on briefly, what's the library's role in kind of supporting generative AI tools like Scopus AI? And I think libraries have a very critical role to play. As a person who's worked in libraries for most of her life, I can say I think that the librarian role really stays similar to what libraries have always traditionally done in areas like assessing tools, curating those tools, and teaching those tools, right? So I think that libraries are still going to need to assess GenAI resources like Scopus AI to determine if they were developed responsibly, if they're built upon a trustworthy and valuable corpus of scholarly information, and if they provide accurate and true information, right? So assessment is key. Curation, right? I've already seen librarians creating libguides and lists of these GenAI tools. They need to be able to continue to do that and determine what tools should be used for what research purpose. And librarians will continue to teach these types of tools and teach users how and when to use them appropriately, right? I remember as an instruction librarian teaching the difference between going to Google and Wikipedia on the open web and going to the library's catalog and databases. Similarly, we'll need to be able to teach students, when do you go to ChatGPT? When do you go to something like Scopus AI? So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Adrian because I know you are eager to hear more about this tool. So Adrian, over to you to get us started.
Oh, thank you very much, Emily. Pleasure to speak to all of you today. So my name is Adrian. I'm the product manager on Scopus AI. And just building on what Emily mentioned, one thing we noticed when we spoke to a lot of people on Scopus who do Scopus searches, we did a couple of polls and a lot of surveys, and we found that around 60% of researchers on a regular basis have a problem of trying to understand or learn new information. This problem was primarily found with early career researchers, but we also found it with more established researchers trying to explore new fields or trying to find other ideas that they could potentially apply to their own research or looking for opportunities. And as Emily mentioned, this can be quite a challenge. If you don't know another field very well, I mean, staying on top of your own field is challenging enough. And you don't have the vocabulary to quite articulate exactly what you want, it's very, very challenging. So an opportunity came up when these technologies, large language models, and another technology we've used called vector models or small language models, which help us build a more natural language search, we found that the combination of these things could create something really, really valuable to help researchers solve this problem of getting started in a new area or exploring. And I'd like to show you a little bit of what that looks like today. But as we will see later, a more practical example will be shown. So if I could just borrow the screen for a second. Thank you very much. And one of my colleagues be very kind to let me know if they can see my screen.
Good.
Fantastic, thank you. So this is Scopus AI. It is a new tab on the scopus.com landing homepage. And what it can do is you can put in a natural language question and we will provide an evidence-supported response based on the trusted Scopus corpus. I'm just going to select an example from here to illustrate this. And I'll talk a little bit about what's happening in the background. So this query here, what we've done is we've actually built a new type of search engine in Scopus based on the abstract content. We use a small language model called Mini-LM, which is open source, and anyone can see how it's trained and what it's been made up of. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to take this query and work out which abstracts in Scopus corpus for the last 10 years at the moment directly speak to or directly answer this type of query. And we're not doing any other kind of ranking other than looking directly at the content in the abstract directly. This is one of the advantages of Scopus because it goes through external panelist review and we have a high level of confidence that the quality in Scopus is highly trusted. We don't have to really rely on things like the number of citations something received, where something was published, or who is published. The quality of the content in the abstract is the star of the show. And what's happened here in Scopus is we've taken this, we've identified 100 documents, and we've also then gone through a little bit of re-ranking using another language model to try and identify what we think are the top documents which help directly speak to this question. And then from those, a large language model, which is right now is ChatGPT 3.5, which is hosted directly on a Microsoft server. So we have a deal with Microsoft that they host this OpenAI model, and any queries or any information that's passed to this model is not stored or used for any training purposes or used for any data collection purposes from Microsoft or OpenAI. OpenAI has actually nothing to do with it. And from that relationship, we're able to take this and then generate a summary like this. And for each claim and assumption made in the summary, we can point to exactly which abstract that claim assumption has been based on. This is really important for ensuring that we create a layer of transparency around where things are coming from, so that anyone can come in here and easily critique or double check that this makes sense. It's a very versatile tool, and it tries to make this information much more readily, easily understandable for a lot more people. And we've done a lot of work to try and ensure that information is formatted and presented in a way that makes sense for people trying to explore a topic for the first time. And of course, one can see all the abstracts we used here. And if you really want to, and a lot of people seem want to, you can copy this for your own notes. Bear in mind, this is not a writing tool. We advise the use of Scopus AI similar to like a search tool. You wouldn't copy an abstract and use it in your writing in the same way we wouldn't advise you using this for any writing. This is more for your own research notes or directing you to potentially very useful sources of information. One thing we did get told, however, is it's great and all that you've done this summary, but a lot of people told us it's not enough. We want to get a bit more detail. So we've actually developed another tool called the expanded summary. And what we didn't want to do is we didn't want to take this summary here and just make a longer version of it. That would defeat the point. You might as well go off and read the abstracts yourself. So what we did is we wanted to try something different. And we'd actually developed a new sort of patent pending technology we call RAG Fusion, which you should definitely go look up. It's gained a lot of traction, and we open sourced the technique for it because we thought it was so valuable, which takes the original query that you put here and tries to find variations on that query. So we can look at from different perspectives or even try to anticipate your next question. And from that, we can generate a much more detailed and more well-rounded summary. It's less specific than the original summary, but you can get a lot more of a broader overview of what type of ideas and topics might be interesting in a given topic or subject you've searched for. Actually, overall, we find that most people love this expanded summary, sometimes more so than the original summary, but we're going to apply some techniques from here to the original one soon to make it even better. There's a lot of great changes coming soon. Another thing we did is we also developed something called the concept map. The concept map was designed really to give you a quick overview of a given subject area. So you can kind of see from a bird's eye perspective, the main terms and concepts that might be related here. And these are primarily based on author keywords specifically. And we've also introduced another nice little feature that you can click on these now and get a little bit more information about how these, for example, 3 ideas are interconnected, also based on the Scopus corpus. And one of our newest features, topic experts. Just been playing up a little bit today, so I apologize if it doesn't work. It's not working well. But normally what's to do, this would identify authors that have published the most in this given topic area. So we look at how many times someone published something with matching keywords, and we also write small mini summaries of that. And finally, we have foundation papers. It's all well and good that we pick what we think are the most relevant papers, but one of the biggest pieces of information we get back, or feedback we get, is, well, you haven't picked the paper that we think has been really influential in this field. And that's very much the point. Sometimes the original papers that described an area which turned out to be like literally the shoulders of the giants we sit upon didn't necessarily have the information in them that would have directly answered this question. But the papers that came after might have. With foundation papers, we're also leveraging another technology in Scopus called our knowledge graph, or our citation graph. And what this does is it looks at all the papers we've used here to generate this summary and a few more. And we tried to see what are the common papers that all of these papers have referenced, which gives you a very quick overview here for the first time, very easily, the shoulders of the giants that we all sit upon, if you want to see where the origin of many ideas come from. And we think this is really, really valuable. And if you want to see those other papers we base it on, we've also created a slightly long citation list here in related documents. Some people even export this directly in the SciVal to do other kinds of analysis, which we find quite interesting. And finally, go deeper. It's hard exploring a topic area when you don't know the words to use. So we developed Go Deeper, which takes a query and we try to suggest some other queries based upon it. And we're doing it with some rules. So if one will say, can you please go a little bit more in detail? One, can you go from a different perspective entirely? Or can you take a much broader perspective? And this, we find, allows users really easily to quickly explore a given topic area or try out ideas they may have not otherwise considered. It's also, we think, a great way of kind of building the instincts of our users and researchers in learning how to even talk about a given subject. So that when they've got more comfortable with this and they think they've developed the words and the things they need, they can go off and do a much more detailed literature search or go speak to a librarian about how they can actually help explore an area in more detail. That's a very quick overview of Scopus AI. And I should also very quickly mention, we've done a lot of work as well to reduce unfair bias. This goes for a lot of testing, sometimes with data sets like Quora's, I forget the name of it now, but we'll make sure we give a note that it's Quora's uncensored or unfair question set. I forget the name now, but it's an open source data set and internal data sets to try and make sure that this product isn't giving anything that may be considered to be harmful and biased. Now, we can't ignore the fact that there is bias in academic literature, and we're not going to try and shy away from that. For example, if I wrote a query here talking about wage gap disparity or trying to make a crazy claim, like saying men deserve to, not my view, if I made a claim like men deserve to get paid more than women, maybe I can try that now. There is academic literature on that, but Scopus AI will point out that this is a heavily biased query and also try and point out as well maybe why some papers have reached a conclusion like that. So we do a lot of that kind of testing, and also we test a lot for hallucination, and also making sure that these statements are actually based on the abstracts that we've pulled them from. We have a really this method of grounding these large language models in the trusted corpus. There's a lot to help reduce the risk of hallucination we find. And we're hopefully going to be getting some more data out publicly about what our results show in that area. And I'm going to stop here because you're going to get a much more practical hands-on example of the use of Scopus AI by a real-life researcher. But I'm happy to answer your questions later. But with that, I'd love to hand over to Emily, who's also got a wonderful question for you now. Emily, please take it away.
That was wonderful. Thank you so much, Adrian. I never get sick of Adrian's demos. I've seen a few of them now, and they're always fantastic. And I always learn something, Adrian. I took some notes. I learned something about I can't remember what it was. Oh yeah, the RAG fusion. The way you described it was great. So yes, let's get up our poll question, because now, just to make sure everybody's awake, we're going to shoot a question at you. So this is our poll question. Are you prepared to use and evaluate generative AI tools in your work? We want to know, kind of get a temperature read on where everybody's at right now. So take a second, answer the question, and then we're going to hold back the answer until the end of the webinar to again make sure you're still awake, and we'll share the answer then. So hopefully everybody has had a chance to click how they feel about this. And yeah, with that, I will hand it over to Ellie. And Ellie, take it away and let's hear about how you've used Scopus AI.
Thank you, Emily and Adrian, and thank you, Elsevier, for inviting me to participate. I'm very excited to be here today. As Emily said earlier on, I'm a postdoctoral research fellow in the communication department of Universitat Pompeu Fabra, which is based in Barcelona. My research is focused on place branding, which is a field of study and practice that for which regions create and manage a positive reputation, especially to attract investment, tourism, but mainly I would like to believe that ultimately the main goal is to improve the quality of life of the people that live in these places. So in my thesis, I explore how place branding strategies can contribute to sustainable development in mountain areas, which is my passion. I love hiking, so I've tried to find a space where I can combine my passion with my passion for research. So today I'll be speaking a little bit about that, and I'll show how this tool has helped me find information that is relevant for me in this context. Together with Doctors Carlos López-Sosa and Luis Codina, whose names you can see here in the slides, we had the pleasure, the honor to be beta testers for Scopus AI. And during this time, we gathered data and we tested the tool using different queries related to our research interests. And today I'll be sharing some of my personal experience using this tool for research. So, starting a new research project, like Emily said earlier on, can be quite challenging, especially for young researchers like me, but also for researchers that are interested in different topics or the intersection of different fields, which is also my case. This is a screenshot I took the first day I used Scopus, the traditional system, to try and find information on place branding and sustainable development in mountain areas. As you can see, I wasn't very successful. And this meant that I had to divide my information need into different search equations and undertake different search sessions to learn about these topics. So how does Scopus AI helps us in this context? This tool, as you've already seen, synthesizes evidence using natural language. And it has a structure that is iterative. So we continue using this tool until we decide we have obtained an optimal answer to our information need, or when we decide that the system or the tool has reached a saturation point and we think that we are not learning anything new. Right. So I will now share my screen and I will conduct a brief demo on a specific case of my thesis to show you a little bit more in depth how these features work and what I learned by using this tool. So I'll quickly share my screen. Emily, Adrian, can you see the screen? Yes?
You can, yes.
Yep.
Right, so as Adrian said earlier on, Scopus AI is incorporated in the usual Scopus database. We need to access the tab. And in this first page, we can find 3 different elements. The search examples that Adrian already showed, which are quite interesting to use the first time we attempt to undertake a search using Scopus AI, because we can learn a little bit how the system works. I highly recommend doing that. Then we've got a short menu here that unfolds some extra information on how this tool works. And finally, the search box. So for today, since I guess we have an audience that's interested in a lot of different topics, maybe some people don't know what place branding is about, I'll take this opportunity to show you, or in case you're interested, I hope you're interested in this. We'll learn a little bit about place branding. So I'll ask, what is place branding? And oops, And how can it... Right, always double check you typed it, you type the words properly, and then you simply select the search button or press intro, and the tool does everything else for us. Usually it doesn't take long, just like we saw. You've probably already seen during Adrian's demo that all the summaries provided by the tool are always structured text. They always come in clear paragraphs using bold type, sometimes lists and numbers as well. That's quite helpful to digest compared to the traditional list of references. So I started, my query was, we could divide into two. We want a definition and we want an explanation of how place branding can contribute to sustainable development. So the first paragraph is a brief definition of place branding is a strategic process of creating and promoting a positive image and identity for a specific location. And we usually use this form of communication to attract investment and tourism as well as talent. The next few paragraphs are showing a first overview of how place branding can enhance sustainable development. It's saying that place branding can actually play a crucial role in promoting sustainable development and creating a positive image. It's also telling us that it supports sustainable tourism, that it helps, that it's related to planning, and that this is actually quite important, that we are looking for engagement from local stakeholders coming from different areas. Now, something that's probably interesting to highlight is that the tool is telling us that none of these abstracts directly address my query. Why is this important? Because the tool is already maybe suggesting there might be a research gap there. I don't know, I'll have to verify this, over my search process, but this is already good, because in the traditional system, I only found one result, but who knows, maybe I didn't put in the right keywords, maybe my search equation was wrong, I don't know, because, I'm new, I'm starting my research, but here I already have some information. I still don't know if it's 100%, I have to verify if this is so, but it's actually telling me that, hi, okay, there's a lot of research on place branding and sustainable development, but not so much, or not at least from a nuclear perspective, because it doesn't appear in the abstract. So if it's not part of the abstract, then probably it's not the core element of this research. So already this is giving me some interesting information. Then the references. All summaries are based on previously validated research, as Adrian said, indexed in Scopus from 2013. We can access these references by clicking on the different numbers or by selecting Show All References. In this new menu, we can look at different information. We can access the whole record. We can access author and source profiles. We can read the abstract, and we can export references in different file types or using different reference managers. It's interesting here to note that Adrian was saying that they were based on abstracts, right? But I want to highlight that some of these titles include my main keywords, right? Sustainability, place, branding. How can place branding contribute to a better place? So it seems like the system is working, right? Okay, I would probably export these references and check them out later. Obviously, even though the system provides a summary, we still need to read the research to find out, to get a full perspective of what happened in those research. Right, foundational documents. This is also very interesting. Maybe some of these documents don't address sustainable development that much, especially considering it's a hot topic since maybe the SDGs became popular, so only a few years ago. Now it's becoming quite of a trend in many disciplines, but still these papers are highly cited papers in the field of place branding. Now that I know a little bit of place branding, I can assure you it is like that, because there are some really important names here, and some of these papers are actually really, really influential in the field of place branding. The same again as before, we can access the entire record, right? We can look at author and source profiles, we can read the abstracts of these documents, export them, and like Adrian said, we can also have a look at related documents, which is also interesting and easy to access just in the same menu. Right, so already in a few minutes, now we are more or less like settling, okay, we know more or less what's going on. Right now, like Adrian said, most people would be like, okay, that's, I get a first idea, but I might need a little bit more information or a broader perspective. So I would select the expanded summary. Usually this doesn't take very long. There we go. And again, a structured text using bolds, clear paragraphs. So in this case, we're not getting the definition anymore, although it might be included in some of these paragraphs. And it's interesting to note how the tool now is showing what the key principles of place branding are and how can they be applied to these areas. What are the environmental and social impacts of place branding? Some challenges when implementing this kind of strategies, as well as economic benefits. I quite like the conclusion paragraphs as well, because they kind of sum up in a really, easy way to digest what the text is about. Again, show all references. I recommend always having a look at this because usually the extended or the expanded version includes more references, but some of these references are not the same as the ones used for the initial summary. So it's always good to see. Sometimes more than half of them are different. So by the end of your session, you have a quite a long list of references that are potentially very useful for you. So again, it seems that place branding is very related to planning. This one would be interesting for me since it's looking at landscapes. Considering I'm interested in mountains, this might bring an interesting perspective. Landscapes again. Sustainable mountain development, this looks like super relevant. Place branding and the strategic spatial planning. So again, it's just it's good that you can access the abstracts here. You can have a look at authors already and even, information on potential sources you might want to send your research to. And just like in the other version, we can export the references. So everything it's just the same. It's very intuitive. Once you've done it once or twice, you already know how it works and it's very easy to navigate. The concept map, while I was preparing this presentation, I was very pleased to see this new upgrade that Adrian was talking about. When we were testing the tool, this didn't exist. This option of selecting any node in the diagram and getting new information on the keywords. I think that's really interesting because before it was good to get a first insight, visually of like, oh, okay, how are these words connected or interconnected? But that was it, you didn't really know much about it. So now it's actually quite good that you get this extra info on how these concepts are related between them. And again, always supported by references. So I would check this again just to see, maybe for my theoretical framework, definitions of sustainability. Okay, so maybe not my core theme, but things that can enrich my research, my literature review. Right, topic experts. Let's see if there's anyone looking into place branding. Oh, right, in this case, Adrian said now it's not working, but I think for my case, this is kind of ensuring what was happening at the beginning, that if no abstracts are addressing this research problem, it might mean, for me, this is an extra indicator that there might be a research gap there, so that there are researchers looking into place branding and specifically into place branding and sustainable development, but maybe not in mountain areas, maybe in cities and other place constructs, So already I have two pieces of information that might help me, decide that, hey, I found a nice spot. Difficult because there's not many researchers looking into that, but good for me because, I can conduct research in these vulnerable areas that are very fragile to challenges like climate change, etc. I will verify this at the end just to make sure I can find topic experts, even if it's just in the domain of place branding and sustainable development. So forgetting about mountain areas, I'll do that just to see if I can find any other experts. So this would be my initial search. I have used everything Scopus AI provides, but usually this tends to be very good. It seems like the tool kind of guesses something that you would like to go deeper in. I'm interested in community engagement, so I would select this follow-up query or question, and the process would restart again. So the tool would generate a new brief summary, this time related to the question I selected. It would provide me a new list of references, a new list of foundational documents, a new expanded summary, and so on. And like I said at the beginning, this would be an iterative process until I decided that I've obtained the information I wanted for this first session. Now, I would like to see if there are topic experts. So I've deleted mountain areas, and I'll have a look. Because if there are no experts in mountain areas, I still want to know who is writing about place branding and sustainable development, because surely I can apply some of their research to my own research, even if these places are different. So let's have a look if I get any topic experts. There you go. I knew it would because I've read a little bit about this. So, right, in this case, Scopus AI is telling me that there are three main influential authors, Fred Gale, Sabari Shankar, and Laura Ripoll Gonzalez. For this feature, as you can see, we can read a short bio. There's information on citations, matching documents they've written on this topic, and their age index, as well as their profile. If we look closely at this, we can see, for instance, Gale, sustainable city branding. We can see Laura Ripoll is also city branding. And here we find something interesting. Rural, okay, rural could be connected to mountain destinations, but then again, it's so much related to tourism, which is a part of place branding, but it's not the whole of place branding. So maybe that's why we didn't get he wasn't or she wasn't identified as an influential author, but at least now I know I have three names. This is interesting. I know they're conducting research on the domain of cities, but this is still interesting for me. So I would conclude this session with, enough information for me to start my research. Now I'll stop sharing my screen and I'll finish off with a few slides. Right. Oh, sorry. There we go. Right. So after this demo, we've seen there are several benefits and some limitations. I'm just going to quickly go through them. We've seen that the tool generates an overview of a research problem. It helps us to identify keywords and relationships, as well as influential authors and foundational works. We can locate and export references. The tool provides operational syntheses that are useful for our literature reviews and theoretical frameworks. And most importantly, all this research is based on quality and previously validated research that we can verify in every single step when we use this tool. Some of the potential limitations: the summaries based on abstracts published from 2013, but it's true that after the beta version, the Scopus AI now includes the foundational work. So this can help, counteract this possible limitations, since we can learn about influential or seminal papers in the domain by selecting this feature. The concept map comes for each set of brief summary and expanded summary. I don't know if providing a concept map for each one of the summaries would change much. I don't know, but this is something I asked myself. Maybe it would be good to have a concept map for each. But now that I've seen that the new version comes with explanation for the interactions within the notes, maybe that counteracts this limitation as well. There is no option to save searches or access a search history, but then again, we are able to identify works and authors. So by remembering these names, we can, go back to the traditional search system and create some alerts that will help us keep track of new researches. And although the tool uses natural language, and this is really helpful because it helps us digest a lot of information, sometimes text can be a little bit simplified, and it might be difficult for us to determine which arguments are more important than others. But again, I think, like I said before, this tool helps us, but we still need to read research. So okay, it's a limitation, but it depends on how we use the tool, right? And transparency and traceability, this is not so much a limitation of the tool itself, but it's something that we, us as researchers, should take into account. And when we use this kind of tools, I would always recommend to take screenshots, copy the text, which is very easy, download diagrams. You can do that from straight ahead from the tool. I think that's good in case someone wants to replicate our study, especially given that science is a cumulative process, right? And using the same prompt at different times might provide different information, basically because new research is indexed every day. So if we keep track of our process, I think that helps. It helps us, and it helps reviewers, and it helps other researchers wanting to look into the same matter. Yeah, so reaching the end more or less, after conducting these tests with the tool, we saw that we identified different research needs we have as researchers, and by looking at the different features Scopus AI provides, we were able to match them. And as you can probably see in this diagram, I won't go much into depth, but one single feature can meet different research needs, and the other way around, one research need can be met through more than one feature, which is quite interesting. Just to finalize, I think with this new tool, we have three ways of searching in Scopus. We can use a traditional search. We can rely solely on Scopus AI, or we can conduct research combining both. At the end of the day, it depends on our research problem and what we're looking for. But yeah, I would say that now a new window has opened, and we have different systems. All in all, this tool provides a global synthesis of a given area or intersection of concepts, and it facilitates multidisciplinary explorations. We believe after finishing our test as beta testers, that Scopus AI accelerates academic processes because it generates operational and focused synthesis instead of a list of results. It uses natural language, and therefore it reduces time invested in both search and evaluation of results. I would like to end up showing this QR code. This would take you to the two documents we've published so far. The first one on the left is a report where we tested the tool in the beta version using several prompts. And the research article, which was just published a few weeks ago, is a case study on place branding. And here we provide an output of what would a search session look like after conducting research with Scopus AI. We ended up with an entire list of unique references that are useful for literature reviews and theoretical frameworks. We ended up with a diagram of different keywords from the different responses provided by the tool, and we were able to build a meta-synthesis by combining the different responses generated by the tool. So I hope you enjoyed this demo, and I will now hand over to Emily, and looking forward to your questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ellie. That was so interesting to see, and it's fascinating to watch an actual researcher kind of interacting with a generative AI tool like Scopus AI and see how you think about it. Thank you for that. So yes, now I get to show the poll results. Here's where our audience is at. Are you prepared to use and evaluate GenAI tools in your work? Somewhat, for the most part. So that's fantastic. And hopefully getting more prepared all the time. That's an interesting it's almost a perfect little bell curve there. So thank you for that. All right. Let's move to Q&A now. We have lots and lots of questions, and I really appreciate everyone who has put questions into the Q&A. As Sabrina mentioned at the beginning, we do have the upvote feature, so you'll see the little thumbs up. What I'm going to do, since there's really no way we're going to get to 43 questions in 15 minutes, please help me out by upvoting the questions you really want to see answered. I am going to sort these questions by upvotes, and we're just going to go straight down in that order. And we will look at all the questions and get to as many as we can. If we didn't answer your question today, please, please, please reach out to us, because we do want to hear from all of you. So the most upvoted question right now is it possible to use a demo version of this AI to understand how it works? And I think I've also seen this question come up a few times. I know Doug, who's helping me out behind the scenes, has answered it as well in chat with some of you. So I think the correct answer to this question, and Adrian, help me out if I'm wrong, is this would be a situation where we really strongly encourage you. There is not an open demo version right now, but our sales reps are obviously standing by and would love to talk to you, set up a demo, set up a trial. They're doing it a lot nowadays. And Doug, if I can ask you, it looks like there's like a contact form, because nobody knows who to contact at Elsevier, right? If you could put that in the audience chat, I think we can send it to everybody, so you know how to reach out and get a demo set up. Yeah, there's no like open place that you can play around with it, but we'd love to set it up for your institution. Adrian, do you want to add to that at all?
No, I think you said it perfectly. Definitely, if there's material, please reach out to the Elsevier representative, or please give us your contact. Well, I think you're going to give out a form that will allow us to get in contact with people if they're interested. And we've been running a lot of trials at the moment recently and getting feedback. And we'd love to, if you're interested, yeah, see if it'd be something that will fit your needs. I'm sure we can arrange something.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. All right, so the next most upvoted question, will AI be available on Science Direct? Adrian, I'm going to kick that one to you as well, even though you're not the Science Direct guy.
I can't answer this question directly, but what I can say is there's a lot of AI experimentation happening across Elsevier. And of course, Science Direct is one of the areas that are experimenting with how AI can help their user needs. So at the moment, there's something, but only in the experiment phase at this point.
Great, thank you. And the next question is, does Scopus AI have any summarization or lit review tools to quickly summarize a list of papers? So this is a great question, and I'm assuming this means, can I plug in a list of papers I already have and have it write a summary?
It's funny, when the first versions of Scopus AI did do this exactly, and we pulled it out because we weren't trying to become a literature review tool. We wanted to be a discovery and exploration tool, and we think there's a lot of great tools on the market that can do lit reviews and summarize those kind of papers if you've already got some in mind. And we're not close to the idea. I like to see it research in some way, but if we do it, we want to make sure we do it in a way that takes advantage of the trusted Scopus corpus and gives people a lot of value over being able to just, copy and paste something into a LLM program and summarize that. So if we do it, we'll do it in a way that we think will add some additional value. Consistency probably will be one of the big things there.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. Yeah, it's funny because when you start thinking about how to develop a tool like this, right, you have to decide there's so many different directions you can go in. There's so many different problems you could try and solve. So you sort of have to choose what you want to prioritize. Great. So next question from Jordan. The research tool for generating research plans is very exciting, but is there a consideration of the ways in which this might deepen some research inequalities? So And this can be not only in global publishing inequalities, gender inequalities, racial publishing inequalities, but also in discipline inequalities and differential citation methods that distribute citations and weightings differently. So I think you touched on this a little bit, Adrian, when you talked about not just using citation rankings, but maybe go a little bit deeper in terms of how we're trying to not add to the problem of bias and inequalities in research.
Yeah, sure. Jordan, thank you for the question. So as I mentioned before, one of the primary things we don't do that a lot of other search tools do is we don't use citation count. We don't rank based on the author's profile or their reputation. We don't rank things on titles, which sometimes can be misleading, even though sometimes, as you saw, they can match up nicely. My titles are great advertising vehicles, but abstract we think is where the content is. And we don't use those kind of signals to try and boost the results. So we're hoping that the way we built this is that if the content itself in the abstract shines, that's getting pushed right to the top, regardless of where it comes from. And that's why you sometimes see in Scopus AI, sometimes documents and results that possibly may have been overlooked in the past, which is why sometimes have lower citation counts than you expect, but the content they talk about might be highly relevant. Now, that's what we're doing on the search side to minimize this. We primarily base on the content itself, not who and where that content came from. But from the Scopus side, as I mentioned before, Scopus has an external content advisory board. So not only is the content in Scopus AI peer reviewed, but also goes through an additional set of reviews before it even gets into Scopus. And that content advisory board, you can look it up on the website. It's globally distributed. It's very diverse. I think they've taken a range of different disciplines as well and try to get a good mix from a range of different areas. Now, we're not saying that service is perfect. We've done our best to try and minimize the type of biases that can creep into academic publishing. But as I'm sure many people are aware that there are inherent inequalities in academic publishing as it is. I mean, being what country you're in, your demographic circumstances, your opportunities can greatly affect what kind of research gets produced and by who and where. So although a lot of steps have been taken by Scopus and the External Advisory Board to minimize that, and on Scopus AI, we've been trying to minimize it by making sure we primary promote based on the abstract content, we recognize that we can't exclude all types of biases that exist in the academic landscape, but we're doing our best to try and minimize it. And as Doug is putting, there's more information, I think, on this on our website. Thank you, Doug, if you're interested in learning more. But yeah, Scopus AI is a reflection of the academic literature that we have on Scopus. But we've done our best to try and minimize the biases that can creep in.
Great, thank you. This is a really interesting question that I don't know if we know the answer to. From Victoria, I can definitely see lots of people using these powerful new tools. As you roll these tools out, how are you thinking about the potential environmental impacts of generative AI? And I will say that coming to Elsevier, I've been really impressed with the focus we have on sustainable development and climate as a company. But of course, with large language models, yes, there is an environmental impact of that computing power. And I wish we had Rachel Martin on this call, who's our director of sustainability. But Adrian, what can you share with us about kind of sustainability around this technology?
Yeah, thank you, Victoria, for raising this question. There's no getting around it. These large language models do use power. Now, what we do know is that the amount of energy used to train these models is massive. It is a huge carbon footprint. And that is an unfortunate part of how we get to having such useful tools like this. However, what we've learned is actually, and we've done actually a lot of carbon calculations internally at Elsevier to understand the impact that running these tools have. And there's a few things we consider when picking what kind of tools we use to solve a problem like what Scopus AI solves. We don't want to use really larger models than we need to. So for example, the vector search, we've taken a careful consideration between what kind of model we use to not only index that content in Scopus, but also make sure it's not so large that we need to host on a massive server somewhere that takes up lots of energy and sits idle. When it sits idle, it's like more energy than it needs to. Additionally, we don't go for large models like GPT-4 or anything like that unless we absolutely need to. In fact, right now, we're not using it at all. We've worked very hard to make this work on the smallest model available. And one of the reasons is that the request per model is quite small overall in terms of carbon footprint. That said as well, the carbon produced by using models like this, at Elsevier at least, compared to the publishing footprint, is really tiny by comparison, we found. Now, this doesn't absolve us all problems, and Elsevier's got clear commitments which I think you can look up online, and how we reduce our carbon footprint and our environmental responsibility. Right now, there is a cost. We think there's an acceptable trade-off between the amount of carbon and of energy we're using to bring these benefits. We're trying to be very conscious that we're not using more compute than we absolutely need to deliver a high, valuable, and quality service. And the hope is that as time goes on, these types of processes get more and more efficient. And I think we're seeing a lot more in that space right now: renewable energy, new types of GPU processes. It's something we're considering very carefully as part of our responsible AI guidelines.
Well, thank you. Yeah, it's a tricky area for sure. And thank you, Victoria, for highlighting that. It's a great question. We're getting close to time, but I think we have time for a couple more. Dana writes, is this pulling papers that are all peer reviewed?
Yeah, not only are they peer reviewed, but they've also come through the additional, as I mentioned before, the review with the content advisory board from Scopus as well. So that's one of the reasons why we feel very confident we can rely on abstract content, because this has gone through 2 sets of reviews to get into Scopus. In fact, I think around of the 3,500 titles that are submitted to Scopus on average per year, only 50% meet this external advisory board's requirements to get in. And even after that, only around 40% are actually accepted. We can read more about it on the website. It's gone through a lot of heavy review to make sure the quality is high content.
Great. All right. Let's see. Another question here. How often is the model that Scopus AI uses updated? Wondering if there is ever a lack of or gap for recently published works.
So the Scopus AI index, and I think this is referring to the search. The question I usually get is, how in sync is this with the Scopus? And it's in sync. Usually, if something gets in Scopus, you'll see that reflected in the Scopus search content within a couple of minutes. We built this to be almost near to real-time updates. So anything gets pulled or any new stuff is added, it's happening constantly, hundreds of times a day.
Great. And just a couple more probably. I'm really sorry I'm not getting to everything. I'm just seeing there's so many questions. All right. How reproducible are these results? For instance, if you relied on just this for a more systematic search, and this person writes, I realize that's not a great idea. Would someone else who replicated your search get the same results? And I think, Ellie, actually, if I can turn to you on this one, because I know you mentioned this in your talk a little bit about taking screenshots and the reproducibility of science. And maybe you can speak a little bit to your experience on that.
Yes, one of my thesis supervisors is an expert in conducting systematic literature review. So part of the process is always documenting the research, right? So we are very used to taking screenshots, and we always provide this data when we send our research to academic journals before they get published, so that they can see what we've done and what our data set looks like. So we use the same system here. If anyone is interested and wants to check our research, you'll see in the report there are lots of different screenshots of how we did the process. And I think that's necessary, because if there's new research being indexed every day and the system is updated, like Adrian said, almost live, then surely the results will be different. No, they might be similar, but also I think they will change. They will eventually change, and they might do quite quickly. So I think it's interesting, or it should be, we should demand ourselves to do it like that. For me, it makes me feel safer anyway. You know, if I can remember how I did my process, I can easily find out if I made a mistake. I can easily show if someone's got any questions or issues with how I did my research. I can share it, and I think it's also something useful for other researchers interested in the same field. So yes, I'm very much supportive of traceability and transparency, and I would encourage other researchers to do that. And Scopus AI helps us with, is already like the little icons help. You can copy things straight away. So you can copy that into a Word document and save it in your drive, and that's it. It's there. It's very easy. It doesn't take much, and it helps us and it helps everyone else. So yeah.
Great. Thank you. And with that, unfortunately, we are at time. I really appreciate all the questions. And I appreciate everyone for joining us today. Thank you so much to Ellie and to Adrian. I'm going to pass it back to Sabrina to close us out.
Great. Thank you, Emily. I'll just echo you and say thanks to Ellie, Adrian, and Emily for taking the time to speak with us today. And thank you to our attendees for your questions and your comments. I'd like to remind our viewers that we did record today's program, so be on the lookout for a follow-up email from Choice and ACRL with a link to the recording and where to access the slides. Also, if you have a few minutes after the presentation to fill out a brief survey, we have one that will pop up from Choice in your browser, and then there's also a QR code on the screen for Elsevier's, and it's also in the chat. So thanks again to all of you out there for joining us. We hope you learned something new from the webinar and hope to see you again in the near future on another session.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.